Chapter 21. Mackenzie was in a daze walking home from the cafeteria. Night had fallen while she'd been inside planning for tomorrow with Mrs. White, and she was wrecked. Her legs were leaden, and it was as though the air had a density that made it impossible to move at any pace. Not that she was in a hurry. She couldn't believe Jake's recent attitude and that he'd left on that stupid raid. He was taking unnecessary risks, and he was leaving her, which, she had to admit, was a small part of why she was so mad. Okay, maybe not so small. Ever since she'd returned to her apartment to find him waiting for her, Jake had become her rock. He was safety for her. Was it only a few days ago? It felt like a lifetime in which she'd aged immeasurably. Her body was struggling with the physical demand she'd placed on it, first walking back to Lincoln Park and then fleeing the city. Even the walk from Chloe's house to downtown Sanford was more exercise than she was used to. Having always maintained the same curvy build no matter how much pizza she did, or didn't, consume, she'd seen no reason to cut into her Netflix time by exercising, which meant, in addition to a bone-deep weariness, her muscles were aching with fatigue. Putting one foot in front of the other was becoming an effort. She seriously needed to reconsider her attitude about getting fit. The overhead streetlight flickered, and instinct made Mackenzie pick up the pace. The last place she wanted to be right now was alone in a darkened street. She had no idea where the closest power plant was and how much manpower it relied on. If there was no one to manage it, how long would it continue to supply electricity? The workings of the world were not something that Mackenzie had ever bothered herself with. Regardless of how neglectful her father was, she'd grown up, taking for granted that water would come out of a faucet when turned on, and electricity would light a room when she flicked a switch. She'd never stopped to consider the how of these functions. Sure, she knew where the town's water treatment plant was because it was right beside a park she used to frequent in her early teens. But how did the water get there? How did it get distributed through the town? The lack of knowledge tightened her chest with helplessness. Tears threatened, but she swallowed them back. She shouldn't have let Jake leave the way he had. She didn't even say goodbye. She was just so tired. She couldn't even attempt rational thinking in this state. Thankfully, the lights of Chloe's front porch beckoned, and she mustered the energy to jog, albeit slowly, up the driveway, greeted by an over-enthusiastic Dex. "I wouldn't have thought to put an apple into this, but it's good," Rachel commented, crunching her way through a salad Mackenzie had prepared using produce Chloe had scavenged from the community garden. They had decided that for as long as they had supplies, they would eat together at home. "I have a feeling our food choices are going to get a lot more creative going forward," Mackenzie answered. "The cafeteria is pretty well stocked, but putting together 3 meals a day for 300 people is going to put a major dent in those pretty quickly. Townsend should get everyone to dig up their front gardens and plant vegetables instead of putting together raiding parties." "Do you think we need to be thinking so long-term?" Chloe asked. "I mean, not everyone died, right? We're still alive, so it stands to reason there are still scientists and government people out there working on a cure and getting civilization functioning again." Rachel narrowed her eyes with skepticism. Looking between the two of them, Mackenzie felt the tug of that rising tide of helplessness again and sought comfort by petting the ever-present Dex, whose tongue lolled in appreciation. "Things will go back to normal eventually," Chloe insisted. "They have to." Mackenzie uttered a non-committal murmur, and Rachel shoved a forkful of spinach leaves into her mouth, chewing with unnecessary vigor. "Thanks for making dinner, Mac, but I'm going to go to bed," Chloe said, pushing her half-eaten plate away. "I've got a headache." "And you're worried about Ash," Mackenzie said. "You're going to cry in the dark, aren't you? Want me to come curl up with you?" "Love you, but no, I just need to be alone." Mackenzie and Rachel watched with concern as Chloe left, shoulders slumped. There was no way she could add to Chloe's emotional burden right now, even if the secret of Jake was a burning itch. I just got busted sneaking food to Maggie at the Strumpet by that asshat Charlie Nixon, Kat said, bursting through the front door and flinging her shoes off as she entered the kitchen. He's such a do-gooding weasel, and honestly, did he really think he was going to tell me what to do? He can't even tell himself what to do. I'm pretty sure he still lives with his mother. Jesus. He's lucky that Quinn was there and saved his skinny ass. Dropping into the seat beside Mackenzie, Kat started picking tomatoes from her plate. Saved him from what? Rachel asked. Me. I had him backed up against the jukebox. Honestly, if you're going to get all righteous about rules, you better have the balls to follow through. Rachel snorted. You probably scared him half to death. Back up a bit, Mackenzie requested. Why were you sneaking food to Maggie? Townsend wouldn't give her rations today because she didn't go to the town meeting last night, Kat answered through a mouthful. Apparently, he thinks it's 1939 and we're living in Soviet Russia. Are you kidding? He can't deny people food. Rachel was outraged. He thinks he can, Kat said. Maggie is putting together a group of people who also think this is bullshit, and we're going to meet soon to figure out a way to handle the assholes. The sooner the better, Mackenzie said. When? Where? I know we don't speak of James O'Connor, but he's offered the distillery as a safe place for us to meet without being found out, Kat replied. Rachel stared at Kat, brows lowered. I know. He's a jerk. That's old news. You know what isn't old news? She sang, that Mac has a boyfriend. Kat, Mackenzie huffed, tugging her plate away. Can you keep it down? Chloe's just in her bedroom. You two better not have discussed the juicy details before I got here. Kat snatched another apple slice from Mackenzie's plate. Hang on, Rachel interrupted. What do you mean, boyfriend? Mackenzie shrank back in the seat as she became the sole focus of Kat's formidable energy. Come on, little hussy, tell us everything, Kat demanded, leaning into Mackenzie's personal space until their noses touched. Kat sat back expectantly, and Mackenzie despaired at the telltale flush she knew would be staining her face. Pressing the backs of her hands to her burning cheeks, Mac took a deep breath. Okay, but this is going to require wine. Lots of wine. Grinning, Kat bound up to rummage through the fridge, loudly denigrating Chloe's choice of Sauvignon. I'll drink it if I have to, but tomorrow we'll get Maggie to stock us up on the good stuff. When their glasses were full, Kat gave Mackenzie an exaggerated well-go-on-then widening of her eyes, but it was Rachel who jumped in. Can one of you please tell me what the hell is going on? As far as I knew, the only boyfriend is the douche back in the city. That ex-boyfriend is yesterday's news. Today's news headline is all about Jake Brent, Kat declared. Rachel's head tipped, obviously thinking before she took a swallow of her wine. Makes sense. That boy has been in love with you forever. Can we agree to refrain from calling him a boy? Mackenzie begged. He is not a boy. And what do you mean, he's been in love with me forever? I thought everyone knew he had a crush on you, and we just decided not to talk about it, said Rachel. Does Chloe know? Mackenzie cried, eyes wide. Not sure, Rachel mused. Does she know now? No, no one knows. Ooh, so it is a secret. I love me a good secret, said Kat. Dropping her head onto her folded arms on the table, Mackenzie groaned. I can't talk about this if you're not going to take it seriously. This isn't just a random hookup. I didn't say it was random, Rachel protested. I know I'm being sensitive about it. Mackenzie sighed. This feels different from anything else I've had before. I just really need to know you're not going to make a joke out of it. Darling girl. Kat flung her arms around Mackenzie's slouched shoulders. You can't honestly think we'd ever make fun of something that's important to you. We love you. We adore Jake. We are 100% behind you two, getting married and making babies and living happily ever after. I'm totally down with a niece or two, Rachel agreed. So, let's discuss the sex, piped up Kat. This is going to make me regret being celibate for the last 12 months, isn't it? Rachel despaired, taking a large swallow of wine. Mackenzie awoke the next morning disoriented, somehow expecting to be waking next to Jake. Instead, she was being spooned by Kat. By unspoken agreement, the four friends had again spent the night at Chloe's instead of heading to their own homes. Careful not to disturb Kat, she slipped out of her loose embrace and headed to the bathroom, almost running into a rumple-haired Chloe. "Morning," Chloe mumbled. "Have you seen Jake?" Chloe shook her head. "I thought he might have called in when he got back to let us know everything was okay." "I haven't seen him," Chloe said. An insidious dread unfurled in Mackenzie's chest, pushing aside any residual sleepiness and making her throat tighten. Why didn't he come and see her when he got back? "Maybe it was really late, and he didn't want to wake us," Chloe said. Nodding mutely, Mackenzie closed the bathroom door with a shaking hand. She fought to hold back the fear, but it bloomed, suffocating and consuming, as she slid down the door and folded onto the tiled floor. She couldn't explain it, but she knew something wasn't right. Wrapping her arms around her middle, she attempted to hold in the knowledge. If she didn't admit it, if she didn't let it out, Jake would be okay.